Give these guys a huge hand for leading us in worship today. So good. You can have a seat. The men and women are going to receive our offering. If you would go ahead and come and take your places. We're about to receive our offering this morning. Thank you for being such an amazingly generous church, investing in our church and in the next generation. If you came prepared to give today, you drop that in the bucket when it comes by. I know that many of you give online consistently and regularly. Thank you for that. So amazing to be a part of a church that loves teenagers, that loves students, and as I saw so many of them up on the stage, and just I know so many of their stories, and Julia being probably first grade when we got here together, and our families have been friends for all this time. And I coached Zach McMullis in football when he was probably 7 or 8 years old, and his mom and sister are here today. And then Caleb and Micah met each other playing basketball together when they were like in 8th grade. So you just know people's stories and you see them grow, and it's so great to be part of a church like this. I want to tell you about one thing or two things really quickly while we're receiving the offering. We've got a lot planned for children and students this summer, particularly in the month of June coming up. We have our Kids Blast, which is for kids ages 2 years old through 5th grade, the first week of June. It's our version of Vacation Bible School, VBS, and so if you have kids in that age bracket, we'd love to have them involved. You can register them on the website or ask downstairs when you pick them up on the way out. And then we have our high school camp coming up, which is an amazing, okay, all right. Some people are excited about that. It's up in Buena Vista and at Noah's Ark, and we typically take 40, 50 high school students up there. It's an amazing week getaway, and it's a turning point in many of their lives. So if you have a high school student, do everything you can to get them there. If you'd like to invest in that and help some students go on scholarship, you can find out more about that on the website as well. So I'm going to invite Charlie and Wendy Mengel up on the stage. Let's give them a huge hand this morning. If you don't know, this is Wendy Mengel and Charlie Mengel, and they have led our middle school and high school ministry for 6.5 years. And today is their last official Sunday in that capacity. And so I'm so incredibly grateful for them. And we wanted to take a moment to honor you. There are hundreds of families, teenagers and their moms and dads and brothers and sisters that have been impacted by the two of you and your ministry. So much of your life in the last 6.5 years has been poured in and invested. And if I think about it too much, I'm going to get really, really wrecked. But all of the memories that we have together as families, from our very first interview, it was me and 2 other pastors who were telling inappropriate locker jokes, and you were on the video, and we didn't think that you could hear us. And then I said, "Did you hear that?" And you said, "Yes." And I said, "Do you still want the job?" And you said, "Yes." And I thought, this is one of our guys. We got him. We found the right guy. Wendy, I said this, of course, in the first service, but I cannot thank you enough for investing in my kids, for taking my daughter 100 times to coffee and lunch and pouring into her. And when I couldn't hear her cry anymore about whatever, you were there and at every turn. Charlie, my son, is you're outside of our family the most influential person in his life. And if he grows up to love his wife the way you love your wife, and love his kids the way you love Judah, and love Jesus in the church, I'll be just so grateful. I have been praying for you since way before I knew you, because I prayed when my children were born that they would have youth pastors that loved my kids the way I loved kids when I was a youth pastor. And as I said before, I was thinking this morning about all the times that we've laughed until we cried and hurt. Our stomachs hurt so bad. To all the dark moments in 6 years. And I thought every time we face something challenging as a family, you guys are standing right there. And There is nothing that we'll be able to say thank you for that. All church stuff is great. I'm just talking as a dad right now. So thank you. And I know that every single one of the parents in this room feel the same way. So parents, teenagers, let's honor this couple right now and give them a huge, huge round of applause. Yeah. Just remain standing for a few moments. We're going to pray for them. Charlie's going to teach today. He is a world-class communicator, one of the best communicators on the planet. And the message this morning it's straight fire. So you're going to love being here today. So let's pray for them. And just as we reach out a hand for our students, would you reach out a hand for this couple as they go into the next season of their life? There is hardly a corner, Lord, of Journey that doesn't have some of the thumbprint of this couple on our church, on our house, the things that we value and that we love, and just hundreds of teenagers and their families that have been impacted by them, Amy and I included, Micah and Maddie included, all of the families in this room included. So we're grateful for them. And as they step into this next season of their life with baby Judah and just trying to discern what's next for them, God, I pray that you would lead them and guide them and direct them. Youth ministries like dog years, so they've been here 42 years. So would you lead them to the next season? We bless them in Jesus' name. Everybody said, amen. All right, thank you.
All right, guys. Well, I'm excited to be here. This mic's kind of acting up this morning, which is amazing, like with ears as big as mine, that it still has nothing to hold on to. I'll do my best. Guys, I'm really excited to give the message this morning. When Scotty talked to me a couple months ago, hey, do you want to preach on your last Sunday? I was like, absolutely. I've jumped at every opportunity to get to share with you guys what I feel like God is teaching me. I heard a pastor once say that he was as excited to preach as would be a mosquito at a nudist colony. So you guys can just, you can have that image forever. So I've been married to Wendy for 7.5 years. We've got Judah, our little boy. He's 6.5 months old. He's a little bucket of love. He's about 22 pounds. So he's in like the 99th percentile in everything. But I've learned a lot being married over the past 7.5 years. I know that's a surprise to some of you guys, but when I was early on in our marriage, we were living in Lake Tahoe, California, and I was working at a church out there. Wendy was a nurse, and so a lot of times when Wendy would work, she'd get home later than me, so I was in charge of dinner. And so early on in our marriage, she'd come home and she'd be like, Charlie, what's for dinner? And I would, like any good man, have cooked a delicious meal. I was like, well, we're having meat tonight for dinner. She was like, oh, great, that sounds awesome. So describe the meal to me. I'm like, well, we've got meat. And there's plates too. like that is it. What else would you need? We got chicken or steak or pork or something. We got meat. And then over time, she's developed this like awareness of me. Like you need more to a meal than just the main course. And so this morning's sermon, I'm calling Always Only Jesus. And it is not that. This morning's sermon is a salad bar. Any salad bar fans out there? Okay, a few of you. No one actually, and here's the ironic thing about it, salad bar guys. Nobody goes to salad bar, like the salad bar, for the salad, right? Like if you're that person, like, oh my gosh, we're like a delicious spread of leafy greens, like so many different types of lettuce and kale to choose from. Nobody does that. No, they're like, oh yes, 42 types of dressing and like 16 types of cheese and little crunchy things and nuts and croutons galore. That's what you go there for. And so as I've been thinking and praying for the last few months about, hey, what do I want to teach like my last time here? what is God communicating to me? He gave me kind of this salad bar. And so what I'm going to share this morning, guys, are basically the top 7 things that I feel like God has taught Wendy and I in our time here at Journey Church. So we've been here for 6.5 years. He's taught us 7 things. That's more than 1 a year, which with my speed of learning and what it takes for God to get something through to me is pretty good. I'm proud of that. It's also the biblical number of perfection. So coincidence? Maybe not. Here we go. I'm going to move fast because we have a lot. Scotty was like, hey, make it an old Baptist sermon. Just preach till they leave. I was like, okay. So if you get tired, if you got somewhere to go, you just get up and leave. Actually, please don't. That would be terribly discouraging. All right, number 1 is this. Jesus changes everything. The first thing, it's Jesus calling right now. He called in the first service too. It was amazing. So God is everywhere. First thing I've seen is that the power that the love of God has to change everything about your life. I've noticed, guys, in the past few years that our culture is obsessed with the idea of the makeover, right? Like we have so many TV shows that are like, extreme home makeover and garden makeover, and I don't watch a ton of them, so I'm actually kind of running out of examples. Like person makeover. On social media, we have all these like, hey, look how far I've come. We have Way Back Wednesday and Throwback Thursday and Flashback Friday, and those are all hashtags, adults in the room. So a hashtag is like a pound symbol that's a tag on a social media outlet, and so a tag is, I'm just going to stop because that rabbit hole just keeps going. Our culture loves to look back and oh my gosh, look how far I've come. I used to be so big and now I'm so small. I used to be so ugly and now I'm so good looking. I used to look like this, now I'm different. You ever look back on pictures a few years ago and you're like, man, I looked good. What happened? Right? Like before I started student ministry, I had so much hair and now I'm like, oh no, this has been hard years. Our culture is obsessed with the idea of I want to change things. But what I've noticed is all those things, they're oftentimes like a surface level change. They change the appearance or the aesthetic of something, but not the thing itself, not the deep root. And maybe that applies to our lives. Like oftentimes, if I asked every person in this room, we probably wouldn't struggle too hard to come up with something about our lives that we want to change. Well, I want to change my appearance or my personality or my nose, or maybe it's deeper than that. I have this secret sin or struggle that nobody knows about, or I have regret, or I don't like the person I see in the mirror. We all have stuff about our life that we'd like to change, but oftentimes when we try to change, all we focus on is just behavior management. I'm just going to act differently, and then that'll change everything. And if you're like me, that doesn't tend to work too very well. But what I've seen time and time again in the last 10 years of doing this is that with the love of God, we experience real change. Like the love of Jesus is the single most transformational thing in the entire universe. God changes everything. Jesus changes everything. And here's the crazy thing, guys, is oftentimes we try to change our lives, but we focus on everything else, and then God is the last resort. Like, I need to change my life, so I'm going to get a new diet. I'm going to get a new workout plan. I'm going to get a new job. I'm going to get a new relationship. And all those things, they just don't change us from the inside out. They don't change what's actually going on deep inside. But when we come face to face with Jesus, he necessitates a change. He necessitates a decision in our life. Like if you want something to change in your life this morning, guys, I really believe this. It always begins with Jesus. And a guy named Paul is writing about this in 2 Corinthians 5. And this is Paul, who was like a Jewish hitman. He would literally go around like hunting Christians, bringing them to jail. And then he has a face-to-face encounter with Jesus, and it changes everything about his life. And he becomes probably the most prolific writer and missionary that our world has ever experienced. And he says this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. And guys, that's why I believe in Jesus, because time and time again, I've seen him change people's lives. Like I've seen the difference he's made in my life, in my marriage, in my parents' lives, in their marriage. I have countless stories I could tell you about students who are totally different after meeting Jesus. We had a student a couple years ago named Teresa, and Teresa was brought by a friend, and she scared me. I'd start teaching and she would just cross her arms and just sit back, not even trying to hide the skepticism. But she kept coming and she kept seeing people who called themselves Jesus followers. She kept hearing a little bit more about Jesus, and we just got a letter a couple days ago, and she has worked for the last 5 years or so at a Christian camp in Montana, and she spends her whole life working and telling young people about Jesus. You talk about a transformation he makes in your life. But here's the thing, guys. True transformation, it takes time. Right? It takes a lot of time. Like, we as a culture have been spoiled by the microwave and the drive-through and the cell phone. Like, I don't know about you guys, I've shared this before, but I'm gonna die of brain cancer. I'm convinced. Because when I put something in the microwave, I don't just trust the process. I don't trust that it's gonna work. I have to micromanage and ensure that it's happening. So I stand there, a foot away, maximum radiation, yes, and just kind of watch, just make sure it's heating up. We're spoiled because we think, I changed. Jesus came into my life. I should be a different person right overnight. And when Jesus comes into your life, he brings identity change. But time spent with Jesus is what leads to life change. And that takes time. And so to someone in the room this morning, you need to be encouraged to just keep going. Jesus changes everything. Just trust the process of a slow and steady walk with Jesus, and it will change your life. Number 2 is this. Second thing I think we've learned is the importance of investing in the next generation. If I could encourage us about one thing this morning really strongly, it would be, hey, we as a church need to always be a church that invests in the next generation. And my bias is I work with middle school and high school students. I have for the last 10 years, so I'm very biased that way. So as I've thought over the past few months, hey, what are some really actionable steps? What are some benchmarks of what it looks like to invest in the next generation? I've kind of come up with 4 things. So to parents in the room, to grandparents in the room, to anyone who's alive in the room or listening, 4 things. Hopefully you fall into that category. First thing, here's what it looks like to invest in the next generation. You believe in them. You believe in the next generation. Again, I'm biased, guys, but I can come up with 1,000 reasons why I believe in our young people. I have so many stories about the potential. I really think this generation has the potential to change our world unlike any other generation. I truly believe that because I've seen it. I've seen high schoolers who every year pay to go to middle school camp and pay to go to middle school fall retreat and pay to go to middle school winter camp and spend weeks of their summer and their time and their effort and their money investing in little kids. I have a group of high school students who has shown up at our middle school midweek environment every single week and led a small group of middle schoolers, which is a lot like throwing a bag of cocaine to some feral cats and then trying to get them to line up by height. It doesn't happen, right? It's impossible. It's incredibly challenging. I just thought of that off the top of my head, right, guys? Very, very accurate. There's a girl named Julia who's sitting on the front row who has showed up an hour and a half early for every time we've ever had middle schoolers. And she's set up chairs and vacuums and organized. And then we go to small groups and she puts it all away and vacuums and organizes and has never once asked for recognition, has just served. The hearts of young people are incredible. Let's believe in them. So to the young people in the room, this is my charge to you. 1 Timothy 4:12 says this. This is written to young people. It says, don't let anyone think less of you because you're young, but do this, but be an example to all believers in what you say and the way you live, in your love, in your faith, and your purity. So to the young people in this room, give older people a reason to believe in you, to see the greatness that God has placed inside of you. Here's the second thing, what it looks like to invest in the next generation. Create a place for them. Psalm 92:13 has what I think is a beautiful picture of this. It says, for they are transplanted to the Lord's own house. They flourish in the courts of our God. And imagine, guys, if Journey Church was known as a place where young people could be transplanted into life-giving, eternity-shaping relationships and environments where they could meet Jesus and flourish in his house. Hey guys, we have to create a place for people. We have to be a church that does that. And so guys, sometimes it's loud and it's smelly and it's chaotic. Stuff gets broken. That's all evidence that it's working. Like you guys may not know this, but below us we have 11 billion kids down there. We're always well under fire code, have no fear. Most of the time, right? The administrator's like, don't say that. But we have so many young people. We have so many little kids. We have so many middle school students and so many high school students. And so sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I can hear them. Or like, oh, what is this? That's evidence that it's working. Let's create a place where they belong. Like, shouldn't the church be the most welcoming? Like, shouldn't the church be the place where young people are like, this is my place. Let's create a place for them. Third thing we do is we invest in them. And so parents in the room, I'm going to pick on you guys for a second. Parents, you have to prioritize your kids' spiritual development, I would say the same as or more than any other area of their life. It's so, so important, because the saddest conversation I've had over and over again in student ministry in the last 10 years is this conversation where a parent is coming to me because their kid is in middle school or high school and is going off the tracks, and they say, what do we do? And my response is, well, you rewind the clock 12 years. So those of you with young kids, man, start young. Like, it is never too early to prioritize this. And parents, if I can be candid, if you spend thousands of dollars a year on sports and drive your kid to a practice or a game 5 or 6 days a week, but you're unwilling to drive them to an environment where they have a small group leader and fellow like high school students or middle school students who believe in Jesus and can encourage them, or you're unwilling to pay for camp, like, you're sending your kids the most clear message about what is and is not important. We cannot not prioritize their spiritual growth and then be surprised when they don't love God. Parents, never, ever make the mistake of outsourcing your influence, of not prioritizing this stuff. And I just encourage you and exhort you that one more time. To the rest of us in here, guys, we're not off the hook. The Barna Group did a study that says every young person needs 7 people in addition to their parents who are speaking life and words of encouragement to them. And so every young person I know is coming up short on that. Nobody has the 7 that I know. So everyone has an incredibly important role. Let's invest them. And the last thing is this. Let's launch them. There's an arrow right here. Here's an arrow. Earlier, guys, it was on the corner of the stage and it disappeared because it fell off, and I thought someone stole it. I was like, man, who steals in church? Like, that is a good luck with that. Guys, there's an arrow, and the thing about an arrow is in the time that this verse I'm going to read to you is written, arrows are handcrafted. There's a verse, it's not going to be on the screen, but it comes from Psalm 127:4. It says this, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Like arrows, like arrows. So arrows are handcrafted, parents, and that's your role. Don't outsource that to a small group leader or a teacher or a youth pastor. That's you. Second thing about arrows is that they have to be launched. Like, they don't go very far by themselves. And as a church, what would it be like if we were a place that launched our young people into an incredible future that God had designed for them? Let's invest in the next generation. Here's my third point, is live larger than yourself. I mean, so many times, guys, I've fallen into a trap where I am just living for me. I'm just doing what I want. I'm doing my schedule. I'm just concerned with kind of what I want to do. That's so easy for us to fall into. There's an inward pull towards self-centeredness in all of us. You know when you start really noticing that? Like when you get married. I thought I was a great person, then I got married, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. My wife brings out the best and the worst in me. And then you have a kid, it's way worse. Like, I am so selfish. Oh my goodness, I didn't even know it. That's how selfish I am, right? There's this inward pull in all of us towards just us. And so if I could encourage you with this morning of let's live larger than ourselves. I want you to ask yourself this question. What is your life show is a priority to you? Like if I followed you around for a week, just kind of like hid, sounds very weird. But if somebody did that, what would they see is a priority to you? Because oftentimes we say something is a priority. We say we're about something, but we live differently. We show differently. What would they say? If they looked at how you spend your time and your money, your passion, what would they say is important to you, that you're about? And every one of us, guys, we have the opportunity and are actively leaving a legacy. We're leaving a wake behind us. And is that a good one, or is that something that we want to change? So if you want to actually live larger than yourself, here's the easiest way I found to do this. You serve somebody on a regular basis. Serve somebody on a regular basis. That's the reason why every spring break we take our high school students to somewhere impoverished and out of their comfort zone. 3 years we've gone to Haiti. This year we went to New Orleans. And students, while their friends were in Cancun or on the slopes hanging out, we spend a week sweating and serving. And the crazy thing is everyone goes down with the right heart. Like, I want to serve. Like, I want to serve some people. I want to help out. And we end up receiving far more than we gave. Because that's how it works. So you want to be bigger than yourself. You want to live larger than yourself. Serve somebody. As people, guys, let's not park on our potential. Because so many people in the room this morning, you have such an amazing, incredible, God-given potential, and sometimes we're just parked in it. Our life is just in neutral on what God wants to accomplish in and through us. And so oftentimes when we start talking about serve somebody, people come up with this great list of excuses or reasons why they can't. They say, well, like, oh, I can't serve somebody because I'm not ready. If you wait to be 100% ready, you will find yourself in heaven someday without having done anything. You'll have a saved heart and a wasted life. Don't wait till you're 100% ready. Why? Because God always calls us, hopefully, to something bigger than we think we're capable of, to something uncomfortable. If God just called you to a small dream, wouldn't that be sad? So people say, oh, I'm not ready. Or the other thing they say is like, oh, I'm not gifted. I'm going to debunk that right now. 1 Peter 4:10. Each one should use, I love this word, whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. So what that means is you're all gifted, we're all gifted, and we need to use it. That's my translation, is find what you're good at and find a way to serve God and serve others. I love that about the local church, that there's so many different ways to serve within it. So some of you guys, if your passion is not like little kids, please don't serve with little kids. Some of you guys, your passion is not middle school. We probably still need you to serve in middle school, right? If some of you guys, you're not gifted with friendliness, not everyone is. Please don't stand at the front door. But everyone has been gifted. Every single person is gifted. And this is a place where you can use that. Don't listen to that lie. The last lie I think people listen to is this lie, if someone else will, or I'm too busy. And guys, let's get rid of that. Everyone's too busy. But you're never too busy to use your life for something. You're never too busy to make an impact. And the fact that you're noticing it, I really believe is God laying it on your heart. If you're like, oh, I wish I had time for that, but I just don't. That's God saying, hey, you need to make time for that. Hey, I'm calling you to this. Listen to that. Live larger than yourself. Here's number 4. We need each other. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen this trend that when people get isolated, they get weird, right? They do. I'm trying not to make eye contact right now because someone's going to be like, he looked at me. He thinks I'm weird, and chances are I do. This is why we encourage groups at Journey, okay? This is why we do groups. I love that Scotty has actually said time and time again for 6.5 years that I've been here, hey, if you only have an hour a week to devote to God, don't come to church. He said, hey, be involved in a small group. Because if you only have that hour a week, we would rather you be in a circle than a road. Why? Because that's where life happens. Because church is important. But guys, when I say that word church, unfortunately, every person in the room, you think of something that I think actually God never intended. Here's my evidence. One of the coolest verses in the Bible, Jesus is talking to his closest friends. He's like, I'm going to build my church, and hell itself isn't going to overcome it. And the dudes are probably like, yes. And then 1,500 years later, finally, the Bible is translated into a language that people can actually read, German. Jesus says, I'm going to build my church, and he uses this Greek word. I'm going to build my ecclesia, which is a gathering of people called out for a specific purpose. That's what it means. Gathering of people called to a specific purpose. 1,500 years later, they're translating the Bible into German, and they use this German word, Kirch, which means a holy place. Do you see the change? Jesus is like, I am going to build an unstoppable tribe, a family, a culture, who are about something, and then we change it to, I'm going to build a nice building, a nice place. Like, church is not somewhere you go to, it's a family you go home to. It's not an event on Sunday, like it's something you're a part of. and we need each other. Here's a beautiful picture of what the church is. 1 Peter 2:5, it says, you are living stones that God is building into a spiritual temple. Like, what an incredible picture. You're living stones. God is building something here that's bigger than each one of us, and we each get to play a role, but it's not about us. Then we're encouraged also in Hebrews 10:25, it says, let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do in Colorado, but encourage, it doesn't say in Colorado, but it's true. Let's encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Why do we meet together, guys? Because we want to be together, because something happens when we're together. And this, I love that our students get this so well. Like, our high school students meet Sunday nights, and a lot of them can drive, which means that there's no parent to tell them to come home, which is a beautiful and a terrible problem. So we started a few months ago, like, okay, when we really can't get them out of the room, we're going to start playing the song Closing Time. You know, oh, I know who I want to take me home. That's actually not a great song for high school students. But we're like, we have to tell them to leave. Why? Because they love being together. Because we need each other, right? Here's number 5. People matter. So like I said, I've been married to Wendy for 7.5 years, and there's a lot of things I do for her because I love her. Like, example 1 would be chick flicks. And all the guys in the room, you can probably identify. Have you ever gotten to the end of a chick flick and been like, oh, I didn't see that coming? Like, no, never. Right? You like never finish, like start a chick flick and like, I wonder what's going to happen. Like, there's Channing Tatum and there's this kind of unattractive girl. They'll probably end up together. Yes, like, I don't know. That's not how my life has worked. You know, actually, I got the good-looking girl and I'm the ugly dude, so that may be true. Aw. I don't love them. Foot rubs. When Wendy was pregnant, she got like the swollen feet, just full of water, and so it felt like good for me to rub her feet. And feet are disgusting. Like, very disgusting. You get little getaway sticks that you're sweating into all day. Nasty. And the last thing I want to do is like, let me rub them. No. But I love my wife. And because of that relationship we have, I want to care about the stuff she cares about. Maybe it's the same way with us and God. Maybe the stuff that God cares about, we should care about too. Maybe if we say we love Jesus, and this is challenging, and we don't love the stuff that he loves, maybe we don't love him that much. Jesus is back. He's talking through Siri. I'm going to always call someone out there on their phone. I'm sorry. You're not on your phone. Here's a challenging verse. John 13:35 says this: if by this everyone will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. Like, hello, conviction. Like, my response to other people is indicative of my relationship with God. This brings a couple questions to mind. Like, do I love people well? Do I do conflict well? Guys, some of you need to throw your computer away, because posting about something or writing an email about something is I would say, like, never the right answer. Do I love everyone? How about that one? If this is true, if because of my love it shows that I'm God's disciple, do I love everyone? Here's an amazing verse about how Jesus acted. John 15:1-2 says this: tax collectors and then other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. And this made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. Do you guys get that? Like, the prostitutes and the pimps and organized crime of the day, they came to church. They came to hear Jesus teach, and the religious people hated it. That should be like the most challenging thing in the world, because I think what that means is that those people should be a part of our church. They should want to come here. Like, shouldn't the church be the most welcoming place on earth? Because it's filled with people who have the answer. Like, we know the antidote to sin. We have the hope of the world living inside of us. And so this should be like the most welcoming place on earth. And so I don't know who like those people are for you. I don't know who the notorious sinners are in your life. But they should be welcome here. Like, if not here, guys, then where? Last two, I'm gonna move really quickly through these. Number 6 is this: we know the end of the story. I turned 30 this year, guys, and I'm getting old, like significantly old. Yeah, right. Some of you guys are a lot older than me. I'm not going to make it that long, all right? I'm going to check out and go see Jesus around like 45 at this rate. I'm falling apart. I have to go to PT. And they're like, so how did you injure yourself? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I remember walking up the stairs and then back down, and then it hurt. Like, interesting, intriguing. Tell us more. While we like bend you and stick needles into you, and it's very humbling, right? I'm getting so old. But the older I get, guys, in this world and in life, I see that life is challenging, right? That life is difficult. And in ministry, I've had the opportunity and like the beautiful and terrible like privilege of being present for people's best and worst moments. Like a few years ago, one of our high school boys took his own life. I was there, like in the house that morning. And I got to meet his sister in the funeral home. And she's now like my little sister. A few months later, we did a funeral for a student's dad that has taken his life. I've gotten to do weddings and funerals as a pastor. I actually got to marry my sister and my cousin, which like no one outside of Arkansas can say is true, but for me. But life is hard, right? Life is challenging. And it's so tempting for us, like in the midst of a hard day, in the midst of a diagnosis or a divorce or something that doesn't make sense or lost, to be like, God, where were you? Or God, what? This doesn't make sense. It's so tempting for us to want the circle to come full circle for full resolution on my timeline or in my lifetime. And the older I get, I just don't think that's how life works, right? But here, I'm going to give you guys this morning like a spoiler alert. Do you know that person who's like the spoiler alert person? You're like watching a TV show, they're like, oh my gosh, wait for season 3 when the main character dies. It's incredible. And you're like, how can I get back at you? Like, do I have to like run over your cat or burn your house down? Like, man, that hurts me. Spoiler alert. Here's a spoiler alert. Guys, we know the end of the story. So on a hard day, I know some of you guys, you're going through the best season of your life, and others, like this morning, you are in the fight of your life. You never know who you're seated next to here at Journey. And here is my encouragement to all of us. This is how the story ends. Every single time I have spoken on a stage after someone has died, I've shared this. Because it's the only thing I've found that makes sense. It's the only thing that brings some difference. Here's the end of the story. It says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, look, God's home is now among his people. He'll live with them. They'll be his people. God himself will be with them. He'll wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. And the one sitting on the throne said, look, I'm making everything new. We know the end of the story. We know that it wraps up, and it wraps up so well. And so some of you guys who are in the midst of the fight, who are looking at the season ahead and saying, I just don't know if I can keep going. I know how the story ends. I know that someday death and sorrow and loss and pain do not win. And I know and I believe that ultimately Jesus wins. I'm going to ask the band to come up on stage, and we're going to start wrapping up. Here's point 7. Point 7 is this. It's always only Jesus. If you hear nothing else, just check in with me for 2 more minutes. It's always only Jesus. Man, as people, we have this tendency to get caught up on so many different things in life and focused on so many different things. It's so easy to do that as people. And I started thinking the other day as I was preparing this message, I was like, what are the questions that God isn't going to ask us someday? Like, I really don't think someday we're going to sit down and have a conversation with God and he'll be like, so tell me, like, how many followers did you actually have on Instagram? Like that post from November 2017, how many likes did that get again? I don't think he's going to sit down with us and be like, so tell me about your favorite car you owned. Tell me about your house. How much do you bench? Do you even lift? I don't think God's going to do that. I don't think those questions are going to happen. But here's a question I know he'll ask us. And maybe the only question that he asks that will matter is, did you know Jesus? Or did he know you? Because students in the room, it's always only Jesus that matters most. Parents in the room, it's always only Jesus that's going to matter long term. Everyone, it's always only Jesus who can change your marriage, who can bring you back from the edge, who can beat addiction. It's always only Jesus who can kill the demon of regret. It's always only Jesus. And if you know Jesus and you have nothing else, you have everything. And if you have everything, but you don't know Jesus, you're missing the one thing that matters most. So to students and parents this morning, getting to work here for the past 6.5 years, getting to speak to you guys every week, to be a small part of what God is doing here is the greatest privilege of my life. There'll never be words. But hear this. We care about so many parts of your life, but the thing we care about the most, the thing you need the most, is that it's always only Jesus. If you're young or if you're old, hear that. It's always only Jesus. Let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for your word, God, for the truth that's contained within it, God. And it's always only you. It's going to be you that matters in the end. It's you that we need. It's you that brings change. Jesus, I pray this morning that we would know you. Because every other truth we spoke about this morning, God, it all finds its summary in that statement. At the end of the day, it's about you, God. And we want to know you. Jesus, we pray this in your name. Amen.